all Israel. The plan of God with regard to corporate Israel begins with the blessing of Jacob in Genesis chapter 49. Genesis chapter 49, verses 1 through 32, my interim translation. Then Jacob summoned his sons and said, "Round up, so that I may tell you what will befall you in the last days. Gather and listen, sons of Jacob, and listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my power and the beginning of my virility, a remnant, even a strong remnant to carry my name. Uncontrollable, like water, you will not leave behind a remnant, because you went up on your father's beds. At that time, you polluted my bedspreads by going up. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their contracts are containers of maliciousness. Do not let my soul enter into an intimate relationship with them. Do not let my glory be united with their congregation, because they killed a man in their anger, and in their goodwill they hamstrung an ox. Their anger is irrevocably cursed, because it is strong, and their unbounded rage, because it is hard. I will allot them as a share in Jacob, and I will disperse them in Israel. Judah, your brothers will definitely thank you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. The sons of your father will prostrate themselves to you. Judah is the cub of a lioness. You will climb up from something consumable, my son. He will kneel, he will lie down like a lioness, but like a lioness with cubs, who would get him up? A branch will not turn aside from Judah, and what has been inscribed from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs comes, and subservience of all peoples is his. One who binds his male donkey to a vine, even the son of his female donkey to a productive vine, will wash his garments with the wine, even his apparel with the blood of grapes. Both eyes bloodshot from wine, but teeth white from milk. Zebulun will reside at a harbor of the seas, and he will become a harbor for ships, but his foothills will be alongside Sidon. Issachar is a limber jackass that lies down between the saddlebags, when he sees that a resting place is good, and that the earth is pleasant. Yet he will stretch out his shoulders to bear a burden, but it will happen that he becomes a slave at forced labor. Dan will adjudicate his people's case as one of the branches of Israel. Dan will be a serpent alongside a way, a horned viper alongside a path, the one that bites a horse's heels so that the one riding him falls backwards. I will wait expectantly for your salvation, your majesty. Gad, a band of raiders will raid him, but he will raid at their heel. About Asher, his bread will be robust, and he will be given some of a king's delicacies. Naphtali is a doe that has been let go, one who makes clear statements. Joseph is the son of a woman who bore fruit, the son of a woman who bore fruit alongside a spring, daughters of a woman who went marching alongside a spring wall. But owners of arrows were bitterly against him, then they increased and held a grudge against him, but his bow stayed permanent, so my seed will leap from his hands, from the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, from the name of a shepherd, the stone of Israel, from the God of your father, and he will help you, and Shaddai. And he will bless you with the blessings of the sea of waters above, with the blessings of the deep that lies below, with the blessings of breasts and womb, with the blessings of your father. They will surpass the blessings of the one who got pregnant with me, as much as the intense desires of the eternally burning hills. They will be for the head of Joseph, even for the crown of the head of the Nazarite of his brothers. Benjamin is a wolf. He will tear to pieces in the morning. He will continue to consume, but toward evening he will allot a share of the plunder. These are all of the 12 branches of Israel, and this is what their father spoke to them when he blessed them. He blessed each of them with whatever corresponded to his blessing. Then he gave them a commandment and said to them, I am going to be rounded up to my people. You must bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, the one that is in front of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham acquired along with the field from Ephron the Hittite as property for a tomb, where they buried Abraham and his woman Sarah, where they buried Isaac and his woman Rebekah, and where I buried Leah, the tangible assets of the field and the cave that is in it from the sons of Heth. I leave it to you to compare the blessing of Jacob to the blessing that Abraham and Isaac spoke when they handed down the promise before they died. When you do, you will find that Jacob scattered the blessing around, giving the bulk of it to Judah and Joseph. Judah got kingship, Joseph got the blessing on the ground. Specifics as to who got what are not pertinent to what I am explaining here. The point is, no one individual became the heir of the promise. And that makes it extremely important that you understand the significance of what God did by orchestrating the exodus of the sons of Israel from Egypt. If you don't understand how he made corporate Israel his firstborn son, the heir of the promise, you will not have a clue as to what Paul had in mind when he wrote things like this. Galatians chapter 3, verses 15 through 29, HSSB. Brothers, I am speaking in human terms. Nevertheless, nobody disregards a validated testament of a man or adds a codicil. Now the promises were spoken to Abraham and his seed. He does not say, and to his seeds, as to many, but as to one, and to your seed, that is, the anointed one. But this is what I am saying. The law that came into being 430 years later, does not invalidate a testament that had been validated earlier by the living God, so that it abrogates the promise. For if the inheritance is on the basis of law, it is no longer on the basis of a promise, but the living God had already granted it as a favor to Abraham via a promise. Therefore, why the law? It was added by the hand of a mediator, after directions were given via messengers, for the sake of the violations up to the time when the seed to whom the inheritance had been promised could come. Now the mediator is not for one, but the living God is one. Therefore, is the law against the promises of the living God? Certainly not. For if a law that could give life had been given, the declaration of not guilty really would be on the basis of law. But the Scripture has confined every last one of us under sin, so that the promise could be given to those who believe God's promise, on the basis of their belief in God's promise regarding Jesus the Anointed One. But before our belief in God's promise came, we were being watched over by law, being confined for the belief in God's promise that was going to be revealed. So then the law has become our childhood guide to the Anointed One, so that we could be acquitted on the basis of our belief in God's promise. But since our belief in God's promise has come, we are no longer under a childhood guide, for you are all God's sons via your belief in God's promise with regard to the Anointed One Jesus. For as many as have been baptized into the Anointed One, have slipped on the Anointed One. There is not Jew nor Greek, there is not slave nor free man, there is not male and nipple, for you are all one in the Anointed One Jesus. So if you are part of the Anointed One, then you are Abraham's seed, heirs in accordance with a promise. Paul concisely lays out the task of anyone called or ordained to be a teacher when he says this. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15, HSSB. Make every effort to present yourself to the living God as an approved worker without reason to be ashamed, cutting a path straight through the word of the truth. With that in mind, I am going to cut straight through the scriptural account of the Exodus, and leave a path for you to follow, provided you are of a mind to walk in the way. The account of how God took the sons of Israel and made them corporate Israel, begins with his declaration that Israel is his firstborn son. So let's start there. Exodus chapter 4, verses 21 through 23, my interim translation. Then His Majesty said to Moses, "When you go to return to Egypt, take a look at all the harbingers that I have put in your hand, and do them in the presence of Pharaoh. But I will make his heart resolute, and he will not let the people go. But you must say to Pharaoh, 'This is what His Majesty has said, Israel is my son, my firstborn. Since I said to you, let my son go so that he may work for me, and you refuse to let him go, guess what? I am going to kill your son, your firstborn.'" From there, we move to the Passover, which is what I call parabolic pantomime. Its purpose is to depict the death and resurrection of God's firstborn son, corporate Israel, via a series of events orchestrated by God Himself. Individual parts of that elaborate parabolic pantomime were, in and of themselves, also parabolic pantomimes, what one might call sacred rituals. Every last one of those sacred rituals had its own meaning and significance, which I will explain at some time in the future. For now, it is enough to know that the Exodus from Egypt was depicting the death of corporate Israel, the firstborn son of God. But it did so at a time when the individual members of the sons of Israel had not yet become corporate Israel. That is demonstrated by Moses' account of the first Passover. Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 28, my interim translation. Then His Majesty spoke to Moses and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "This new moon is the start of new moons for you. It is the first of the new moons of the year for you. Speak to all the assembly of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this new moon they must take for themselves, each one, a lamb for a house of fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the house is fewer than being more than a lamb, then he and the nearest resident to his house must take a lamb by a calculation of souls. You must compute the lamb in accordance with what each one eats. Your lamb must be a year-old male without defect. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. Then it will become guard duty for you until the 14th day of this new moon. Then the whole congregation of the assembly of Israel must slaughter it between the 2 evenings. Then they must take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel on the houses in which they eat it. And they must eat the flesh on this night, roasted with fire, and they must eat it with unleavened bread along with bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or cooked by cooking it in water, only roasted with fire, its head along with its legs and along with its insides. And you must not leave a remnant of it until morning, so you must burn up in a fire whatever part of it is left as a remnant until morning. And you must eat it like this: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your club in your hand, and you must eat it in a hurry. It is a Passover for His Majesty, so I will pass through the land of Egypt on this night and viciously attack every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from a descendant of Adam even up to beast, and I will make decisions based on the truth against all the gods of Egypt. I am His Majesty. But the blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and I will see the blood and skip over you, so the destroyer does not make a savage blow against you when I viciously attack the land of Egypt. So this day will be a reminder for you, and you must make it a pilgrimage to a feast for His Majesty. Throughout your generations you must make it a pilgrimage as an eternally burning statute. You must eat unleavened bread 7 days, but on the first day you must make the remnant of leavened dough keep Sabbath away from your houses. because anyone who eats what is leavened from the first day until the seventh day, that soul will be cut off from Israel. There will be a holy convocation for you on the first day, and a holy convocation on the seventh day. There must not be any work done on them, nothing but what will be eaten by any soul, that alone may be done by you. And you must observe the feast of unleavened bread, because I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt on this very same day, so you must observe this day throughout your generations as an eternally burning statute. In the first new moon, on the 14th day of the new moon at evening, you must eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the new moon at evening. A remnant of leavened dough must not be found in your houses for 7 days, because anyone who eats what is leavened, that soul will be cut off from the assembly of Israel, whether temporary resident or native of the land. You must not eat anything that is leavened. In all your places of habitation you must eat unleavened bread. So Moses called out to all the elders of Israel and said to them, Pull back and take one of a flock for yourselves, for your families, and slaughter the Passover lamb. Then you must take a bunch of hyssop, and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and make some of the blood that is in the basin, make contact with the lintel, and with the 2 doorposts. And you must not go out, anyone, of the entrance of his house until morning. When His Majesty passes through to savagely strike the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts. And His Majesty will skip over the entrance and not let the destroyer come into your houses to strike anyone. So you must stand watch over this word, as an eternally burning statute, for you and for your sons as long as a burning eternity. And it will happen, when you go into the land that His Majesty will give you, just as He spoke, that you will stand watch over this transportation work. And it will happen, when your sons say to you, What is this transportation work you have? That you must say, It is the communal sacrifice of a Passover to His Majesty, the one who skipped over the houses of the sons of Israel in Egypt, when he struck the Egyptians, but snatched away our houses. Then the people knelt down and fell prostrate. So the sons of Israel went and did just as His Majesty commanded Moses and Aaron. They did it like that. To understand the significance of that passage, you need to know that every second person, personal pronoun, lowercase u, in that passage is plural except for 2 of the 3 in verse 24. Likewise, every second person verb is plural, lowercase u. That is because God is communicating through Moses and Aaron to a disparate group of individuals prior to the Passover. Only when He addresses them as His firstborn son, corporate Israel, does He use the second person, singular form, of the personal pronoun, and verb, uppercase u. And He begins speaking to them that way immediately after their exodus from Egypt, when He explains why corporate Israel had to die. Exodus chapter 13, verses 1 through 16, my interim translation. Then His Majesty spoke to Moses, saying, Treat every firstborn, the firstling of every womb among the sons of Israel, among the Adam, and among the beast, as holy to me. So Moses said to the people, Remember this day, that you came out of Egypt, out of a house of slaves, because His Majesty brought you out of this place with a strong hand. So what is leavened must not be eaten. You are going out today, during the new moon of the green ears of barley. And it will be, when His Majesty brings you into the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, which He swore an oath to your fathers to give to you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you must do this transportation work during this new moon. 7 days you must eat unleavened cakes, but a feast for His Majesty is on the 7th day. Unleavened cakes must be eaten the 7 days, and what is leavened must not be seen by you, and a remnant of leavened dough must not be seen within all your boundary. So on that day, you must tell your son, saying, on account of His Majesty doing this for me, when He brought me out of Egypt. And you must have it as a sign on your hand and as a reminder between your eyes, so that the teaching of His Majesty will be in your mouth, because His Majesty brought you out of Egypt with a strong hand. So you must observe this statute every day at its appointed time. And it will be, when His Majesty brings you into the land of the Canaanite, just as He swore an oath to you, and to your fathers, and gives it to you, that you must make every firstling of a womb and every firstling of the offspring of a beast, that you have passed through to His Majesty. The males belong to His Majesty. But you must ransom every firstling of a jackass with a lamb, and if you do not ransom it, you must break its neck. And every firstborn of Adam you must ransom with your sons. And it will be when your son asks you tomorrow, saying, why is this? Then you must say to him, His Majesty brought us out of Egypt, out of a house of slaves. And it happened, when Pharaoh found it hard to send us away, that His Majesty killed every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Adam even up to the firstborn of beast. Therefore, I sacrifice every firstling of a womb, the males, but I ransom every firstborn of my sons. So it will become a sign on your hand and symbolic ornaments between your eyes, because His Majesty brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand. There are other parabolic pantomimes described in the Pentateuch, whose purpose is to explain the ins and outs of the sacrificial death of Jesus Christ, after He became corporate Israel, the firstborn Son of God. But the most important thing for you to take away from the passage above at this time, is the fact that in that passage every occurrence of a second-person verb, and personal pronoun, is singular, uppercase U. That is because Moses is addressing the sons of Israel as a corporate body, the corporate body of God's firstborn Son, corporate Israel. He is explaining the fact that the exodus from Egypt depicted the future death of just one person, Jesus Christ, the one who would eventually become corporate Israel, God's firstborn Son, when every other member of corporate Israel had been cut off from that corporate body. Now that I have explained the significance of Moses addressing through Aaron, a group of the sons of Israel with either the second-person plural, or the second-person singular form, of the personal pronoun or verb, let me show you where that little bit of information provides a whole lot of insight into the meaning and significance of the biblical text. Take a look at this. Exodus chapter 19, verses 1 through 25, my interim translation. In the 3rd new moon after the sons of Israel came out of the land of Egypt, on this very day, they came into the wilderness of Sinai. When they set out from Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai and set up camp in the wilderness, Israel set up camp there in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to the living God, and His Majesty called to him from the mountain, saying, This is what you must say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel, You saw what I did to the Egyptians when I carried you on the wings of griffin vultures and brought you to myself. So now, if you carefully listen to my voice, you will stand watch over my legal agreement, and you will belong to me as a treasured possession out of all the peoples, because all the earth belongs to me. But you will belong to me as a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you must speak to the sons of Israel. So Moses went in and called to the elders of the people, and set before them all these words that His Majesty commanded him. And all the people responded together and said, We will do all that His Majesty has spoken. Then Moses took the words of the people back to His Majesty, and His Majesty said to Moses, Look! I am going to come to you in the thunderhead of the cloud, so that the people can hear when I speak with you, and also believe in you for a burning eternity." So Moses told the words of the people to His Majesty. Then His Majesty said to Moses, "Go to the people and make them holy today and tomorrow. They must wash their cloaks so that they are prepared for the third day, because His Majesty will come down on Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people on the third day. So you must mark a boundary around the people, saying, 'Be on guard against yourselves going up into the mountain or even touching the outskirts of it. Anyone who touches the mountain must definitely be put to death. A hand must not touch him, because he must definitely be stoned or shot with arrows. Whether beast or man, he cannot live. During the drawn-out sound of the ram's horn, they can come up into the mountain.'" So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and made them holy, and they washed their cloaks. Then he said to the people, "Be prepared for the third day, do not come near to a woman." Then it happened on the third day, when the morning came, there were voices and flashes of lightning and a cloud of glory on the mountain, and the sound of a very loud trumpet. So all of the people who were in the camp trembled. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet the living God, and they positioned themselves on the lowest parts of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai, all of it, was smoldering because His Majesty had come down on it in the fire, and its smoke went up like the smoke of the kiln. And the whole mountain trembled exceedingly. As the sound of the trumpet was going on and becoming very loud, Moses spoke, and the living God responded to him by voice. Then His Majesty came down on Mount Sinai, to the top of the mountain, and His Majesty summoned Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. Then His Majesty said to Moses, "Go down, testify against the people, so that they do not break through to His Majesty, to see, and many of them fall. And even the priests who come close to His Majesty must make themselves holy, so that His Majesty does not make a breach against them." So Moses said to His Majesty, "The people are not able to come up to Mount Sinai because you testified against us, saying, 'Mark the boundary of the mountain and make it holy.'" So His Majesty said to him, "Go down. Then come up, you and Aaron with you. But the priests and the people must not break through to come up to His Majesty, so that he does not make a breach against them." Then Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. Every second-person form in that passage, when it refers to the people as individuals, is plural. They are also referred to as they, or them. That is because God viewed them as a disparate group of people, who must prepare themselves for the ratification of the covenant, that the corporate body was about to make with the living God. He spelled out the terms of that covenant, when He spoke to them from Mount Sinai, and gave them the terms of the covenant. But He does so using only the singular form. Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17, my interim translation. Then God spoke all these words, saying, "I am His Majesty, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of a house of slaves. You will not have any other gods before me. You will not make for yourself a graven image or any shape, what is in the sea of waters above, or what is in the earth below, or what is in the water under the earth. You will not prostrate yourself to them, and you will not be their slave, because I, His Majesty, your God, am a jealous God, one who levies the reprehensible activity of fathers on sons, on the third and on the fourth generation, of those who hate me, but one who does an act of loving kindness for thousands, for those who love me and for those who stand watch over my commandments. You will not carry the name of His Majesty, your God, as a deception, because his majesty will not acquit the one who carries his name as a deception. Remember the day of the Sabbath, to treat it as holy. You must work 6 days and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath for his majesty, your God. You will not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male slave, or your female slave, or your beast, or your temporary resident, who is within your gates. Because his majesty is going to make the sea of waters and the earth, the sea and everything that is in them in 6 days. Then he will rest on the seventh day, therefore, his majesty will bless the Sabbath day and make it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be extended on the ground that his majesty, your God, is going to give to you. You will not murder. You will not commit adultery. You will not steal. You will not respond against your neighbor as a false witness. You will not desire the house of your neighbor. You will not desire your neighbor's woman, or his male slave, or his female slave, or his ox, or his jackass, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Those are the terms of the covenant that the sons of Israel accepted when God spoke to them from the mountain, and the biblical text plainly states they accepted those terms. What the text doesn't tell you in any straightforward way, is all the details of the oral Torah that God called me to explain. One of those details is, the covenant ratified at Mount Sinai, said the sons of Israel could only inherit what was promised as a corporate body. What that means is this: if even one individual sinned, the corporate body became guilty and was no longer qualified to inherit what was promised. So the people should have known they could never keep the terms of that covenant, and that is what the prophet Ezekiel had in mind when he said this. Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 25, my interim translation. And I also gave them statutes that were not good, and judgments by which they could not live.